Whispers in the moonlight. The house on Blackthorn Hill had stood abandoned for decades, its once grand facade now cloaked in ivy and shadow. Locals spoke in hushed tones of the woman who haunted its halls, waiting, longing. Some claimed to hear her sighs carried on the wind, others swore they glimpsed her pale form wandering the corridors, a spectral bride forever yearning for a wedding night that never came. The waiting. Eleanor had been waiting. She barely remembered what it felt like to be flesh, to have a heart that beat and a body that ached with longing. But she remembered him. The warmth of his lips against her wrist, the weight of his body above hers, the promises whispered in the dark. She had waited for James to return, for their love to be completed, in the way it was always meant to be. But he had never come back. Each night, she roamed the crumbling house, the remnants of her past clinging to her like a phantom embrace, heavy with longing and regret. The air was thick with memories, phantom touches that lingered on her skin. Whispers of promises never fulfilled. The echo of laughter, now long gone, curled around the decaying walls, reminding her of what once was and what could never be again. The bedchamber still carried the scent of roses and candle wax, the air thick with the echo of passion left unfulfilled. Sometimes, she would lay upon the bed, letting the illusion of touch take her, imagining his hands upon her, his breath against her throat. It was not enough. It would never be enough. His return. Then, one stormy evening, something changed. A presence stirred in the house. Eleanor felt it before she saw him. The thrum of energy, the disturbance in the air. Someone had returned to her. She drifted down the staircase, her form barely more than mist, and there, standing in the threshold, soaked from the rain, was him, James. But he was not as she remembered. His eyes, still the color of storm-touched steel, were haunted, lined with years of longing. His dark hair was streaked with silver, his face sculpted by time's cruel hands. He was older, a man weathered by the years they had lost. His lips parted. Eleanor. She trembled at the sound of his voice. James. He staggered forward, reaching out as though he could touch her, but his fingers passed through her like mist. A sob broke from his lips. It's true, then. You've been here, waiting all this time. She nodded, aching to touch him, to feel the heat of his skin against hers. I waited for you. His expression twisted with grief. I tried to return. I swear it. But I was taken. War, the sea, the cruel hand of fate. I searched for you, but by the time I returned, you were gone. Eleanor's form wavered, the pain of lost time pressing against her. I could not move on, not without you. I lingered, hoping, believing. She lifted her eyes to his. You have come back to me now. Crossing the veil. James stepped closer, his breath a ghost against her cheek. But how can I hold you? His voice was rough, with despair. How can I love you when you are? She silenced him with a whisper of a touch, her ethereal fingers brushing against his lips. There is a way. The storm outside raged, wind rattling the windows, as the veil between worlds thinned. Eleanor had felt it before. On certain nights, in certain moments, when the barriers weakened. If he wanted her as much as she wanted him, if his desire matched hers, they could bridge the divide. James swallowed hard, his body shuddering. His mind raced. Was this truly possible? Could he dare to hope? The years had taught him the cruelty of fate, the pain of longing for something lost. Yet here she was, standing before him, shimmering with ethereal beauty, offering him a chance to reclaim what had been stolen. His heart pounded with desperation, with fear, with a need so overwhelming it threatened to consume him. "Tell me what to do." She stepped back, leading him up the grand staircase, the candlelight flickering in her wake. The bedroom remained untouched by time, as though it had been waiting too. The bed, still dressed in silk sheets, was an altar to what had been left unfinished. James hesitated at the doorway, his breath unsteady. "Eleanor, I." She turned to him, her form shimmering in the dim light. "Do you still love me?" His answer was immediate. "Yes, always." She reached for him, and this time, when his hand met hers, she felt him. Solid, warm. The air crackled with energy, the boundary between life and death trembling. His fingers traced her jaw, disbelieving. "You feel real." "I am real," she whispered. Then, his lips found hers, and the years of separation collapsed. Their bodies joined in a slow, desperate rhythm, rediscovering each other in a way denied to them for too long. Every whispered gasp, every shuddering sigh wove together, creating something eternal. The past and present blurred, the boundaries of flesh and spirit dissolving until all that remained was their love, raw and unbreakable. The final goodbye. Eleanor unraveled first, her body arching as she cried out his name, consumed by a pleasure so intense it felt like surrendering to the stars. James followed. Moments later, his release violent, overwhelming, as he buried himself deep inside her one final time. And then, as the final waves of pleasure faded, Eleanor felt the shift. Her body, no longer bound by the chains of unfinished desire, grew lighter, freer. She looked up at James, her lover, her heart, and saw the truth in his eyes. It was time. A single tear traced down her cheek as she cupped his face. "Thank you," she whispered. His expression crumpled. "No, Eleanor, please." But she only smiled. "I was waiting for you. Now I can go." The first rays of dawn broke through the window, casting golden light over them. James reached for her, desperate, his hands passing through the vanishing edges of her form. A strangled sob tore from his throat as he watched her dissolve into the morning light, his arms aching with the absence of her. He fell too, his knees pressing his palm to the spot where she had lain, where her warmth should have lingered. But there was nothing, only silence, only loss. A breeze stirred the room, carrying the faintest whisper of her voice. "And quot, I will love you always." And quot,